All right, welcome to another Deal Structure Sunday. I'm joined by my son Nick and partner Nick, and we are going to walk you through a little bit different environment here for you to see, because you're used to the Deal Structure Sundays being on a spreadsheet or a whiteboard or the pre-formatted screen. We're going to actually walk you through this deal because this deal had, as Nick will share with you, many nuances. And I think it's interesting for you guys to know, especially if you're a new Wicked Smart viewer on YouTube, that we kind of show you the good, the bad, the ugly, right? We show you everything. I'm going to scroll up to get rid of some of the property addresses, but it's a moot point. This has been cashed out since then. Let's dive in, Nick.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
So the reason we're doing it this way is to show you the progression.
It's a very interesting one.
In many ways. Okay. So we got this deal by an expired listing, I think. Was that true? Was that the case, Nick? If that's what we thought, right? This goes way back.
Yes. From memory, yes.
Okay, this goes back to December of 16, guys. And this was, I think the first visit was my son-in-law, Zach, Nick's brother-in-law, the brother-in-laws. And what I wanted to point out, Nick, just chime in anytime. And when we get to the buyer, you have a lot to say, I know. But yeah, this first sandwich lease agreement, guys, I want to show you pieces of this just for you to know, especially if you're outside of our community. This was an older version, albeit, but these things are all pre-done for you. They're in the agreements and checklist module in QLS Home Study. You get all these, okay? So just some things to point out where I have arrows. The term here was 12 months and automatically renews for 2 periods of 12 months. So we've got a 3-year lease here, but we had them initial where we have a contingency right here to sell the home. So we get to sell the home, and if we don't sell the home, we don't have to go forward with the agreement. It's so important for you to know this as a new student. Now, do Nick and I approach deals sometimes and just take them definitively if we think it's a really good deal and the seller needs that? Yeah. But when you're brand new, you're not going to do that. So let's pretend this is your first deal. You made a contingent upon a buyer, so you can go out and find that tenant buyer first. I'm going to scroll through. You don't need to see all the parts of the agreement. You'll be bored to tears. The next thing that's important in our pre-printed agreements is when we're talking a sandwich lease, we never talk sales price. You'll notice the first arrow says what the sale price is what? It's exact mortgage balance at time of closing, because it started at, let's see here, around 207,000. You'll see it on the screen there, 207,421. That's what it was the day we put this under agreement, December of 16. But at the end of the term, depending on how long it goes, it's going to be less than that. So we're going to owe the exact balance. So we pick up all that principal. And we agreed with this gentleman to $97,578.11 in cash equity. Okay, so really that's the important number for a seller. We don't talk price, because if you're talking to an expired listing or a FSBO, they have a number in their head, right? That they're going to net after negotiating and home inspections and all the crap that can go on. So we just focus on, well, we're going to get you 97,000. In this case, it was an exact number. Okay, so that's agreement wise. I'm going to get you guys through this. We have the standard seller closing costs are paid by the seller in one of these sandwich leases. Why? They're getting cash. They're getting 97 grand. When Nick, if you remember when we first started, we would offer to sellers, oh, we'll pay you closing costs. And then we close out many of these payday threes, and we realized, meaning the buyer cashes out, and we realized they never really
stopped volunteering now.
Yeah, we stopped because they never really they expected to pay their own closing costs. That's normal in most states. So we stopped doing that, and this stipulates that they're going to pay their own closing costs. If there was no equity in this deal, on the buyer side, would be saying we're paying transfer tax, perhaps, maybe. Okay, that's negotiable. All right, let's see. Is there anything else worth pointing out, Nick, before we talk about the buyer? Just the date. So end of 16, we entered this lease purchase agreement. Now let Nick walk you through a little bit of the highlights here. We won't get into the weeds yet, just to see what the deal was. Again, standard rider, standard situation for our deals. This is still the purchase, right, Nick?
Yeah, this is the original. That's the original rental.
This was in February of 17, so 2 more months, right? Yeah. All right. So talk about the buyers a little bit, Nick. The deposit's obvious, but we'll scroll down. Actually, we can scroll right down to their numbers, right? There you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a moot point now. You certainly about the buyer themselves, but once we agree with this buyer, they fit within our 3 to 10% down range, and then we got them in there, and my dad and I were just reminiscing, talking about it at this time from 2016 or 2017 to 2019. These are some of our best buyers. We never really never heard from them. Always paid on time, always made all their down payments on time, and we never heard from them. Kept up the property great. And it was just an interesting, definitely an interesting situation. But their price they locked in, as you can see, is the 329.9.
And let's see where we were, Nick. Before any principal pay down, we were at about excuse me, 305 or so, whatever those numbers come to, the 207 mortgage plus the 97. Before principal pay down, we were at a little over 300,000.
It was tighter just because of where the market was at that time. I remember doing the pricing and looking at the numbers. It was tight at the time, and it just, as this deal evolved, it just kept getting better and better with all the twists and turns.
So 24,800 payday one. Can you just address for maybe the newer people? We didn't take it all up front. We took 14,000 up front.
Well,
15,000 up front. And then they had some other payments. Just explain the logic of that basic for people that might be brand new. Why are we taking it later and how's that work?
This one is actually all right. So one of the things that we say is we have that range, 3 to 10% range for the down payment, and we get buyers on the phone all the time. I answer this question weekly. Well, Nick, that's a pretty big range, 3 to 10%. What do you really want me to do? What can I do to get this home tied up? And I leave it in their court. Say, hey, all of our homes are first come, first served basis. So the higher you get your down payment, the better your chances of being accepted for this particular home. And really, we have, and I think this was the case on this particular deal, we have 2 to 3 buyer meetings and 2 to 3 set of buyers that we're picking from, so they know they're competing against each other. And the higher they get their down payment, the better their chances of being accepted. So this one actually came in right in the 5% range. If I'm just doing the numbers in my head real quick, 5% range initial. And then over time, we schedule out payments based on their work, their employment, when they're getting bonuses, when they're getting tax returns. If they're expecting a big lump sum at a certain time of the year, we'll say, all right, well, how much out of that would you be comfortable committing towards your down payments? So after going through a year with them, they say, okay, great. Would you also be willing to do this for the next year? And of course, 95% of the time they say, yeah, why wouldn't I? That's great. And that down payment, their total down payment, leaves them in the range of 7 or 10%, probably closer to 10%. This was really no different.
So I'm looking at the dates, Nick. Well, 2 things I want to say. If you're new to this whole situation, not in the Wicked Smart community, A, you should be, side note. B, the buyer side of this is actually the easier part. Everybody says, well, what if you don't get them sold? You can see this took us a couple months to get sold. But once we will tell you that the harder part is getting the property. Once you get the property, you're now offering out, especially in this market, you're offering out a property that the conventional buyer thinks they can't get to. In other words, they couldn't get a loan. And here you are giving it an opportunity, a path to home ownership. Now, if I look at dates, Nick, that agreement with the buyer was signed in January of 17. If you remember, everyone watching, we have 36 months. So in January of 20, we're supposed to cash this out. Now, we got a phone call. I don't know exactly what month it was, but we got a phone call that said basically, hey, it was from the past sell, I think, Nick, right?
Yeah.
Said my son was by the property.
Yeah, this was, at this point, we were still partners with him.
Yeah, it's a sandwich lease still.
Yeah.
So it's still in the lease. It's it's February 17 when they got in the house. And then sometime later that summer or fall, whatever it was, we got a call saying SWAT was at the house. Long story short, they had some problems with the law and SWAT was swarming the house. These guys, as Nick said earlier, never missed a payment. Nothing was on. We do a criminal sexual harassment background check. Nothing came up on that. So this evidently was their first time doing something wrong, illegal. And so we eventually got them out of the house. Long story short. Now, pivot to, let's see, buyer number 2. Let's see if we have, I don't think we have buyer number 2 in here.
We had to go into the property, get it cleaned out with the junk that they left behind and get it cleaned and ready for sale again. we do have the numbers real quick on the second buyer, and then once we were able, we got it cleaned up and got the landscaping taken care of, we were able to put it on the rental market again. Because we had enough time to do that. And when we put it on the rental market again, we looked at the numbers as far as the price that we could sell for. And we couldn't really, the market hadn't really appreciated that much in that particular segment of the market. So we stuck with the same price. However, this evolved. I remember meeting with this individual, this rent-to-own buyer, who ended up just recently cashing it.
We'll hit that.
Yeah, we'll get there, but he just recently cashed it out for a much higher price than his original price that he locked in.
Okay, so buyer number 2, let's do some dates. Buyer number 2 came in April of 18. And the deposit on that one was 55,000, 15,000 at signing. So payday 1 for us, if you're new to the paydays, we've trademarked this system. Payday 1 was 15 at signing and 40 additional over time. Now, here's what happened though. You'll recall that in the sandwich lease with the seller, we had until from 17 till 20 to get this thing closed out. Well, towards the end of the lease, towards the end of our lease with the seller, the buyer wasn't ready to cash out yet. So there's always options to pivot, okay? For you guys to go, what happens if the buyer doesn't cash out? There's always options for you. In this particular case, the seller was not being flexible with us whatsoever. And many are, because they just want to work with you. You're sort of in partnership. You're not on personally on anything. Long story short, this guy didn't. So what we chose to do, and I think we've probably done this twice in our whole career, maybe 3 times, is we raised private money and we bought the home and cashed him out. So remember, he was supposed to get 97 grand, right? Plus the payoff of a loan. Let me show you the HUD that took place in December of 20. You can see that on the screen right there. December of 2020. We purchased a home for $295,000, but of course we got credit for anything else we had done to date. And what we owed him cash at closing was $300,000 even. Keep in mind, this is less than 3 years later, right? Just under 3 years. So we owed him $300,000 at closing. Now, again, this was December of 20, okay, for a timeline for you guys. We stayed in the deal, and then Nick just alluded to the fact that we cashed this deal out.
Do you want me to talk? Because we're always sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and not just telling you the rosy things. This tenant buyer actually brought us to court, I think 2 or 3 times over non-payment of rent. And each time we—
What do you mean brought us to court?
Well, no, we
brought him to
court
Yeah.
over non-payment.
I should make sure I understand.
Yeah, because he went through stretches of not paying his rent. His attorney advised him not to pay it for whatever reason at that time. And then eventually he ended up paying it and curing it and
Every time
going back on track. However, all of these times that he was doing this, and we had to bring him to court for non-payment of rent, this is in violation of his lease. So we're not under any obligation to sell the property to him at the price that he originally entered into, which was $329,900. And he wasn't even ready. Even if he was ready, we weren't under any obligation to sell the property to him at that price because he violated the lease several times.
So let's backtrack again. When he started the process with Nick, Nick sat down, did our normal buyer's meeting. You'll have access to all of these checklists and agreements in the forms module. This is the arrangement that he adhered to and actually paid all his deposits, correct?
Yeah,
and fixed the house up.
He did. Yeah.
Okay, so you see that price right there, $329,900. Nick was very clear with you that if they default on any part of their lease, they therefore lose their option to buy the property. Now that means the ball's in our court. Does that mean we kick them out? No. Does that mean we have total control over what we do for price? Yes. So when he finally called in 23 this year,
Do you
and
remember
said—
the conversation?
I don't. Do you want to share a little?
You called in. We had him come to the office, and my dad called in because I think you were out of state at the time, and he just said that he's still interested in buying the property, and we said, well, look, we can't sell it to you at that price that we originally entered into the agreement, your original rent-to-own agreement. So when you do come to such time where you're able to get financing, we're gonna have to revisit the price. He understood that. He didn't argue with us at all over that.
Right.
Actually.
Now let's wrap it up, because we could go into some nuances, but let's wrap it up. End result, 2023, we sell the property for 411,000.
No, 450,000.
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
So we sold it for more, but the way the underwriters will write these up is they can put the 450 something thousand down or 460 down, and then they can then give credit for a deposit down here. The buyer and the buyer's attorney, there wasn't an underwriter that we dealt with here because it was a cash deal, even though he went and got it somewhere. I don't know, maybe it was private loan. Chose to write up what was due. What's the balance here due? We had a high sales price, 460 or whatever it was,
450, yeah.
instead of 329.9, guys.
That was the market value at that time, yeah.
So then we got the net due to us after all his deposits. We did give him the credit for him, was 411. Now, I circled this and I put less private investors. We got $394,000 at the closing table. We also got the 55,000. We also got the money from the first buyer. Okay, so I don't know what those add up to. Maybe 55 and 24, whatever that is, 79, 80 grand plus the 394. But remember, we raised $300,000 to do this, so we had to pay the investors back. Kept the 24 original, kept the 55 original, kept this net of 94,000. Okay, so all that to say two things: we will always, always, always give you guys the good, the bad, the challenges, the wins, the pitfalls, everything. This deal had some crazy ones, and it goes deeper than Nick and I would spend another hour with you. There's a few points here, besides us always, always, always being open with you. When you come into the community, you're going to find that amongst 140 other people in the community, associates and team members, number one. Number two, it's super, super important for you to know that these pitfalls can and will happen. Not every deal, but they can and will. And not just us, but the community is there to help you through them. So, Nick, any other last minute thoughts here as we wrap up this different deal structure?
Yeah, we were talking about looking at the HUD and what the lender, that lender particularly, or that private person just chose, their attorney chose to write up the settlement statement being what they've already, the purchase price, which is 450, not writing that up, but less the deposit already paid in and just have that amount. Most lenders will do that. That's how their underwriters will want these to be written up.
Or a piece of it, piece of the deposit.
Because then that allows them to have flexibility and do like zero, almost like a zero down. If it was a loan, like a zero down loan at a lower price, and give them credit. Well, we're of course giving them credit for what they already paid in.
All you care about, and we get this question from associates all the time. Well, the underwriter wants to change it. You don't care about how they change it as long as they get their loan, as long as you net what you were going to net originally. It doesn't matter how they want to write that up and what they want to give them credit for the deposit or not, or full, as long as you get your net. All right, guys, I hope you got some nuggets out of that. I'm sure we had some confusing points for you too that you would then want to bring to the Wicked Smart sit down, which we run every Thursday. It's free, 4 o'clock Eastern to 4:50 or so. And again, you can come with anything. You can come with deals, questions, come and say, I saw Chris and Nick on the deal structure and they confused the daylights out of me. Whatever you want to bring to the sit down, you can come to the sit down. And we definitely look forward to seeing you this year at the Wicked Smart Kickstart. It's virtual. It's on December 8th. It's all day. It's on your computer screen. You don't have to go anywhere. Register for that. Go to wickedsmartkickstart.com, wickedsmartkickstart.com. Also, live event, the next live event in March, wickedsmartsummit.com.